The snow had begun falling early that morning in Aspen, Colorado, dusting the pine trees and blanketing the high-end chalets with a postcard-perfect white. The air was crisp, the sky a pale silver, and the mountains loomed in the distance like silent witnesses to the secrets of the rich. In one of those grand resorts nestled near the base of Snowmass, Noah Whitmore stepped out of a black SUV, his breath forming small clouds as he adjusted his tailored coat. He wasn't here for fun. The annual Winter Charity Gala was less about generosity and more about polished networking, and Noah, as always, had an image to maintain. CEO of Whitmore Capital, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in Chicago, now facing yet another weekend of fake smiles, champagne toasts, and backhanded compliments. Noah hated parties, especially ones where everyone already knew his net worth. He was 38, successful by every public measure, but lately his days had felt empty, each one blurring into the next, like snowfall against a window he never opened. He had no date. His assistant had arranged everything, the room, the clothes, the guest list. Noah had simply shown up, checking his reflection in the mirrored lobby of the hotel, brushing an invisible crease from his coat sleeve, his face betraying nothing. The concierge greeted him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and Noah offered his usual polite nod before heading toward the grand ballroom, where lights glittered like diamonds and the sound of soft jazz leaked through the double doors. Inside, the gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a golden hue over the crowd. Tables overflowed with delicacies, lobster rolls, foie gras, chocolate sculptures. Noah made his rounds, exchanging rehearsed pleasantries with tech founders, venture capitalists, and fashion editors. But even amid the wealth and glamour, he felt like a ghost drifting through his own life, his laughter never quite real, his smile just muscle memory. Then something shifted. Across the room, near the fireplace, a woman stood with her back to him, wearing a simple dark green velvet dress. Her hair was longer than he remembered, cascading over her shoulders in soft waves, but he'd know that posture anywhere, calm, proud, unshakable. He blinked, unsure if his mind was playing tricks. But when she turned slightly, reaching down to hand a cup of hot cocoa to a child by her side, Noah's breath hitched. It was Claire. Claire Hadley. His ex-wife. The one person who had once mattered more than his company, his money, or even his name. They hadn't spoken in over 5 years. Their divorce had been quiet, the kind lawyers prefer. No scandal, no messy court battles. Just two people growing apart, or so he had told the media. In truth, Noah had drowned himself in work, buried his heart under spreadsheets and board meetings, while Claire had packed her bags and moved away without leaving a forwarding address. Seeing her now, standing in this glittering crowd, felt like watching a ghost walk through his very real world. But that wasn't what made him freeze. There were 3 boys with her, maybe 4 or 5 years old, each with dark hair and sharp jawlines, each with the same ice blue eyes he saw every morning in the mirror. They were dressed in tiny matching sweaters, giggling over marshmallows, oblivious to the chaos they had just unleashed in his mind. Triplets. Identical triplets. Noah's throat dried. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible, was it? He stepped back, nearly bumping into a waitress carrying flutes of champagne. Claire hadn't seen him yet. She was too focused on the boys, her expression soft and maternal, a version of her he had never known. Noah tried to collect himself, gripping the edge of a nearby table. Thoughts collided in his brain. Why hadn't she told him? Were they really his? How long had she been back in the country? Did anyone else know? His pulse quickened, the noise around him fading as one of the boys turned and locked eyes with him. For a split second, the boy just stared, curious, innocent, unaware of the storm he had just stirred. Then he smiled. That exact same crooked grin Noah had as a child. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. He needed answers, but not here, not with half of Colorado's elite watching. Swallowing hard, Noah turned on his heel and made his way to the hallway, needing air, space, something to hold onto. The night had started like any other, predictable, cold, empty. But now it felt like everything was about to change. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The cold hallway outside the ballroom gave Noah no comfort, only a silence loud enough to let the questions echo in his head. He leaned against the marble wall, staring out the frosted glass window, the snow still falling like it had no plans to stop. His breath fogged the pain, just as his thoughts fogged every sense of reason. Claire. After 5 years of absence. No letters, no phone calls, no sign of her existence. She had just appeared out of nowhere, standing less than 50 feet away, surrounded by 3 small boys who looked like they had walked out of his childhood photo albums. He wasn't sure whether to run to her or turn and leave Aspen entirely. Noah didn't do feelings. He was a man of numbers, deals, logic. He didn't believe in fate or signs. But seeing those boys, his boys, he was nearly certain of it, had shaken him more than any financial crash or hostile takeover ever had. He pulled out his phone, opened his calendar app, stared blankly at the list of meetings he had scheduled for Monday in Chicago. None of it seemed to matter now. He slid the phone back into his coat pocket, suddenly aware of how much was at stake. If they were his, everything would change. His life, his priorities, the identity he had built piece by piece after the divorce. Claire's decision to keep them a secret wasn't just painful, it was monumental. Back in the ballroom, the music shifted to something slower, more melancholic. Noah inhaled sharply, straightened his coat, and walked back toward the door. He needed to face her. Needed to look her in the eye and ask the questions that had been waiting 5 years too long. When he re-entered the room, Claire had moved away from the fireplace. She stood near the far end of the buffet table, pouring water into a cup while two of the boys tugged at her dress and the third spun in circles, making airplane noises. Noah approached slowly, each step weighted with memory and caution. She saw him when he was just a few feet away. Her hand froze in midair, water sloshing over the edge of the cup. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then softly she whispered, "Noah?" The sound of his name from her lips was enough to make his chest ache. He nodded, unsure what expression his face was forming, anger, confusion, something between. Claire looked older but not in a tired way. More like she had grown into herself. Her once restless energy now felt grounded, peaceful. "I didn't think you'd be here," she said, her voice controlled but hesitant. Noah's eyes drifted toward the boys. One of them was now sitting on the carpet playing with a napkin, the other two chasing each other around a pillar. "I didn't think you'd be here either," he replied, his voice rougher than intended. "Are they?" He didn't need to finish. Her eyes dropped and she nodded once. A slow, almost guilty nod that twisted something deep inside him. "Yes," she said quietly. "They're yours." For a moment, neither of them moved. Noah blinked, his jaw tightening, years of betrayal and heartbreak flaring up. "3, Claire?" he said, not harshly but incredulously. "You had 3 sons and didn't tell me? You disappeared and never called. You let me think we were done. Completely done." "I wasn't ready to raise them around your world," she said, the words spilling out with a mix of pain and defense. "Boardrooms, business flights, press conferences. I was pregnant when I left, Noah. I found out just days after the papers were signed. And I knew. I knew if I told you, you'd take control. You'd want to turn them into mini versions of yourself. And I didn't want that for them." Noah stared at her, stunned. "You think I would have just used them? Branded them with my name and sent them to prep schools? Claire, they're my sons. I had a right to know." She looked away. "Maybe. But I had a right to raise them in peace. To decide what kind of life they'd live, away from the constant pressure that surrounded you. I never hated you, Noah. I just didn't fit into your world. I barely fit into mine." Noah sighed, dragging a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. "You should have trusted me." Claire glanced down at the boys, who were now piling sugar packets into a tower. "Maybe I should have," she whispered. "But it's too late now." "No," Noah said, stepping closer. "It's not." Their eyes met again, years of unspoken emotion swimming between them. Regret, anger, affection, and something else, possibility. One of the boys came running toward Claire, crashing into her legs with a laugh. She steadied him, then looked back at Noah. "Do they know who I am?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "They know they don't have a dad around. I told them he lived far away and was too busy." Noah's heart sank. "I'm not too busy now." Claire's gaze lingered on him, uncertain, as if weighing 1,000 thoughts. "I don't know what you want from this, Noah." "I don't either," he said. "But I want to try. I want to know them." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. One step at a time." That was all he needed to hear. For the first time in years, something other than work filled the silence inside him. He looked down at the little boy now examining his watch with fascination, and a strange smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Maybe this party wasn't the end of another pointless evening. Maybe it was the start of something entirely new. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Noah had never been more uncertain about what to wear to brunch. For a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals and ran one of the most successful tech firms in Chicago, the idea of choosing between a sweater and a flannel shirt had never posed a challenge. Until now. He stood in front of the hotel mirror, buttoning and unbuttoning a navy cardigan, then finally settled on a plain charcoal crewneck. It wasn't about the shirt, of course. It was about what came next. Brunch with Claire and the boys. His sons. The word still felt foreign in his mind, like a language he used to know but hadn't spoken in years. He left the Limelight Hotel and stepped into the biting aspen cold, but this time, it didn't bother him. His focus was elsewhere. The cafe Claire had suggested was a cozy, local spot tucked on a quiet street off Main, far from the lavish buzz of the winter party scene. The place was called The Daily Dose, a rustic little eatery with brick walls, mismatched chairs, and a chalkboard menu featuring items like hiker's omelette and snowy day French toast. Noah spotted her through the window. She was already seated at a booth near the back, bundled in a cream knit sweater, sipping coffee while watching the boys argue over a set of crayons. He hesitated at the door just for a second, then pulled it open and walked in. Claire looked up and smiled, cautiously but genuinely. "Hey," she said, standing slightly as he approached. "Morning," he replied, his voice a little too soft but sincere. One of the boys turned to stare at him, the same big hazel eyes Noah saw in the mirror every day. "This is surreal," he muttered, sliding into the booth. The boys had a shared energy that bounced between them like static. Claire introduced them one by one. "This is Liam, the loud one. That's Owen, the serious one. And the one trying to draw a snowman on the salt shaker? That's Reed." Each name carved itself into Noah's heart like a secret he should have known years ago. Liam flashed a wide smile with a missing front tooth. Owen offered a shy nod. Reed ignored him entirely. Noah smiled, unsure of how to speak to them. He wanted to ask everything at once. What they liked, what they hated, what they dreamed of when they closed their eyes at night. But he didn't want to scare them. So he just said, "I'm Noah." Liam grinned. "We know. You were on TV one time. Mom changed the channel but I saw it." Claire flushed and Noah let out a quiet laugh. "Well, I'm not on TV anymore," he said. "Today I just want pancakes." They ordered breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes for the boys, black coffee and avocado toast for Claire, and a Western scramble for Noah. As they ate, Noah found himself pulled into their orbit. Liam told a loud, convoluted story about a snowball fight. Owen asked if robots could ever get married. Reed, the quietest, sat next to Noah and slowly inched his plate closer to share a bite. It wasn't much, but it meant something. Claire watched all of it quietly, her eyes drifting from the boys to Noah and back again. She didn't interrupt. She didn't over-explain. She just let it happen. After breakfast they went outside. The snow had slowed, and the sidewalks were packed with locals and tourists alike. Claire zipped up the boys' coats while Noah awkwardly helped Reed with his mittens. He had never put mittens on a kid before. He had signed six-figure contracts with more ease. They walked to Wagner Park, where the boys immediately found a hill perfect for sledding. Claire sat on a bench and Noah joined her, both of them watching the boys race up and down, tumbling, laughing, arguing like tiny warriors. "You're good with them," Claire said, her voice light but edged with surprise. "I've never spent time with kids," he admitted. "Not even my nieces and nephews. Always felt like I'd mess it up." She looked at him. "You didn't mess up today." He nodded slowly, staring at the boys. "I miss so much Claire. Their first words, first steps, even the dumb little milestones like learning how to tie their shoes. I can't get that back." "I know," she said. "But they're still little. There's a lot you can be there for." They sat in silence for a while, broken only by Reed's triumphant shout as he slid down the hill and landed in a pile of snow. Noah smiled. "I want to be part of their lives," he said quietly. "Not just for a weekend in Aspen. I want to know them. Help raise them." Claire looked at him with eyes that had once held so much hurt, now replaced with something softer. "It won't be easy. I don't expect it to be. But I'm not the same man I was when you left. Back then, I thought success meant making everyone else smaller so I could climb higher. Now, I just want to build something that lasts." Claire nodded slowly, the wind brushing strands of hair across her face. "Then start slow. Be around. No pressure. Just show up." He nodded. "I can do that." As the afternoon sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long golden shadows on the snow, Noah found himself laughing with the boys, sharing snowball strategies and bad jokes. For the first time in a very long while, he wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or market shares. He was thinking about sleds and mittens and what it might feel like to read 3 bedtime stories in a row, even if he had to cancel a flight to do it. He didn't know what the future held. Maybe Claire would never fully trust him again. Maybe the boys would always think of him as that guy from TV. But maybe, just maybe, he could earn his place in their lives, one small moment at a time. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Back in Chicago, the city was exactly how Noah had left it, fast, loud, and unapologetically cold. Skyscrapers stood tall and indifferent against the winter sky, the streets buzzing with yellow cabs and people glued to their phones, rushing through life. But Noah wasn't the same man who had walked these streets just a week ago. The echoes of laughter from 3 little boys sledding in Aspen still rang in his ears. His thoughts drifted to Claire more often than he expected, and not in a nostalgic, painful way. It was something different now. He'd seen something raw and real in her eyes during that brunch, a flicker of the old trust they once had. And that gave him something he hadn't felt in years, a second chance. At his office in the West Loop, Noah sat behind his sleek glass desk, staring at his calendar but not really seeing it. The board meeting was in 10 minutes and his assistant, Brooke, had already reminded him twice. He didn't care. His mind was still in Colorado, kneeling in the snow next to a boy who'd finally handed him a mitten. He finally stood, adjusted his blazer, and walked into the conference room where his team of executives had been waiting. Everyone fell silent the moment he entered, a routine hush born of years of respect and fear. But today Noah's energy was different. He took his seat at the head of the table, cleared his throat, and looked around. "We're pausing the Phoenix acquisition," he said flatly. Several jaws dropped. One of the senior partners, Jason, leaned forward. "That's a $200 million deal. The paperwork's almost finalized." "You sure?" "I'm sure," Noah said. "We're not doing it just because we can. We're doing it because we think we should. And right now I don't think we should. We've been growing too fast, buying companies we barely understand. Let's take a breath." There was a beat of stunned silence, then murmurs around the table. Brooke shot him a glance from the corner, part surprised, part impressed. Noah wasn't known for second-guessing billion-dollar deals. But he wasn't known for visiting parks with toddlers either. That afternoon, instead of heading to his next meeting, Noah took a detour to a bookstore near Oak Street. He walked aimlessly through the children's section, picking up titles at random. He had no idea what kids like to read now. He settled on a few picture books and an illustrated beginner's guide to outer space because Owen had asked if robots could marry, which had to mean he liked science. He left the store and stood on the corner, staring at the snow beginning to fall again. And then, without overthinking it, he pulled out his phone and called Claire. Her voice came through after 2 rings, surprised but not cold. "Hey," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Noah replied. "Actually, I was wondering if the boys might want to come to Chicago. Just for the weekend. Nothing big. We could go to the planetarium, maybe a museum. Just a visit. I'll fly them back Sunday night." There was a pause. "That's unexpected." "I know. I bought them books. And I kinda want to read them." "That's it." Claire was quiet, and he imagined her trying to read his intentions. "Let me talk to them," she said. "They'll probably be excited. I'll call you tonight." That weekend, the triplets stepped off a private jet at Midway, all bundled in matching coats Claire had labeled with their names. Noah had never arranged car seats before, and he fumbled awkwardly with the straps as the boys chattered about flying through clouds. Back at his high-rise apartment near the lake, the boys ran around like they were in an amusement park. Liam loved the floor-to-ceiling windows. Owen was obsessed with the fridge that dispensed crushed ice. Reed discovered the voice-activated lights and spent half an hour turning them on and off. Noah ordered deep-dish pizza, Chicago's finest, he'd promised them, and that night, for the first time in his adult life, he knelt on the carpet of his penthouse and read bedtime stories with 3 heads leaning against him. Liam kept interrupting with sound effects. Owen asked too many questions. Reed dozed off with his thumb in his mouth. Noah didn't stop smiling. Sunday came too fast. At the airport, the boys hugged him without being told. Claire, waiting to take them back to Denver, looked him in the eye. "They had fun," she said. "They said you made the best hot chocolate." Reed won't stop talking about the light switch. He chuckled. "It's a big deal apparently. They want to come again," she added. "Maybe in a couple weeks." Noah hesitated. "Claire, I don't want to just be a weekend novelty. I want to help. With school pickups, doctor visits, all of it." She didn't answer right away, but her eyes softened. "Then prove it," she said. "Be consistent. Show up. No speeches, no promises. Just actions." He nodded, watching the boys wave as they walked toward the boarding gate. He stood there long after they disappeared, heart full in a way no business victory had ever made him feel. Later that night, back in his apartment, Noah sat in silence, thinking about what it meant to be a father, a partner, even if they were no longer married. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in years he was looking forward to tomorrow. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Noah's apartment, once a silent space designed for solitude and efficiency, had started to feel a little more like home after the boys' visit. He kept finding reminders, one of Owen's toy astronauts wedged behind a cushion, Liam's scribbles on a napkin he'd forgotten to throw away, and a small handprint on the glass window Reed had pressed his face against while watching the snow. For years, Noah had told himself he didn't need family, didn't need noise or chaos or sticky fingers. But now that they were gone, the quiet was louder than ever. He couldn't focus at work the way he used to. During meetings, he caught himself staring out the window, wondering what the boys were doing. He even downloaded a weather app for Denver just to know if they needed coats. Every few days he sent them little voice notes, reading a page from a book or telling them about the animals he'd seen at the zoo during a business lunch. Claire never stopped him. In fact, she started replying too, sending pictures of the kids making snow angels or brushing their teeth with foam covering their chins like Santa beards. On Friday afternoon, Claire called him, sounding more tired than usual. "Reed's had a cough all week. I've taken him to urgent care twice. It's nothing serious, but he's been cranky. I'm behind on grading papers and the twins are bouncing off the walls." She didn't say it to complain, just to vent. But Noah caught the edge in her voice. "I'll come to Denver," he said without thinking. "I'll help for the weekend. No strings, no drama. Just backup." Claire hesitated, surprised, then said quietly, "All right. If you're sure." That night, he was on a red-eye to Colorado, bundled in a wool coat and scarf, trading corporate meetings for kindergarten chaos. When he arrived at Claire's doorstep in Highlands Ranch, she looked exhausted. Her brown hair was tied up in a loose bun, and she wore pajama pants and an old college sweatshirt. Still, she smiled when she saw him. "They're asleep," she whispered, stepping aside to let him in. The house was modest but warm, filled with soft lighting and the faint smell of vapor rub. Reed was curled up on the couch with a humidifier nearby, cheeks flushed but breathing easier. Noah gently knelt beside him, tucking the blanket around the boy's shoulder. For a moment, Claire just watched. It was a small gesture, but it spoke louder than any conversation they'd had in years. The next morning, all three boys pounced on him like puppies. Owen wanted a piggyback ride, Liam begged for pancakes, and Reed clung to him like a sleepy koala. Claire stood in the doorway with her coffee, shaking her head but grinning. "You're spoiling them already?" "That's the plan," Noah replied, flipping pancakes like a pro, even though he nearly burned half of them. They spent the day building snow forts in the backyard, laughing until their faces hurt. At night, Claire made chili while Noah helped with bath time, chasing squealing boys around with towels. It was messy, loud, and totally different from anything he was used to, but he loved it. Later that evening, once the boys were asleep, Claire and Noah sat on the back porch wrapped in blankets, sipping wine. The stars above Colorado were clearer than any he'd seen in Chicago. "You've changed," Claire said softly. "I don't know if it's Aspen or the boys or something else, but you're different." He glanced at her, setting his glass down. "Maybe I just stopped running. When we split, I threw myself into work like a coward. I thought if I made enough money or bought enough companies, I'd feel less broken. But none of it mattered. Not like this." Claire looked away, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "I never hated you, Noah. I just couldn't do it alone anymore. I needed a partner, not a ghost with a credit card." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. He didn't ask to stay the night and she didn't suggest it. But when he left the next morning, the hug she gave him lingered a little longer, and something in her expression had softened. The following week, Noah returned to Chicago, but something had shifted. He'd started setting boundaries at work, leaving the office at a decent hour, and saying no to meetings that didn't matter. He even began attending parenting webinars in the evenings and joined a local dads group, anonymously, just to learn what he didn't know. He realized he wanted to be more than just a father who visited. He wanted to be present. Involved. Real. 3 weeks later, Claire called with unexpected news. Reed had been selected for a preschool art competition and was too nervous to present his drawing alone. "He wants you to be there," she said. "He says you're his lucky charm." Noah felt a lump in his throat. He cleared it and said, "Tell him I'll be there. No matter what." And he was. Front row. Camera in hand. Clapping the loudest when Reed nervously pointed to his finger-painted picture of a rocket dog flying to Saturn. That day something inside Noah clicked. This wasn't just about redemption or making up for lost time. This was about building something new, something better. Not just with the boys but with Claire too. And maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over. It was just starting again in the middle of real life. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The snow in Denver had started to melt, revealing patches of brown grass and muddy sidewalks. Spring was nudging its way in, and with it came change, not just in the weather but in Noah's life, in ways he hadn't anticipated. Ever since Reed's art competition, Noah had started visiting more regularly. Not just for weekends but slipping in on Thursdays when his meetings wrapped early, or flying in for a single afternoon just to read bedtime stories. The boys had begun to expect him, and Claire, though cautious, no longer looked surprised when he showed up at the door with takeout and a lopsided smile. She let him in without hesitation, as if his presence had slowly become normal again. One Thursday evening after the boys had gone to bed, Claire and Noah found themselves sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by Legos and half-eaten cookies. The TV was playing some low-volume nature documentary, but neither was watching. Claire was flipping through old photo albums, one she hadn't touched in years. "You remember this?" she asked, turning the book toward him. It was a picture from their wedding. Nothing grand, just a beach in Santa Monica, her hair tangled by the wind, his tie crooked, both of them laughing like fools. "Yeah," he said, staring at the photo longer than he expected. "You made me promise we'd never live boring lives." She smirked, resting her chin on her hand. "We kept that promise, didn't we?" For a while they sat in silence, the weight of years and regrets settling between them. Then she said something that caught him off guard. "I'm thinking of applying for a faculty position at the University of Chicago. There's an opening this fall. It's competitive but I have a shot." Noah's heart skipped. That's huge." She nodded slowly. "It is. But it would mean uprooting the boys. Leaving this house, their school, friends. I don't want to do it unless I know I'll have real support. Not just child support. Real co-parenting. From someone who doesn't vanish when things get tough." Noah swallowed hard, knowing this was more than just a conversation about geography. It was about trust, redemption, responsibility. "You'd have it," he said. "All of it. I'm not the same man who left you holding everything. If you move to Chicago, I won't just show up, I'll be there. For bedtime. For school runs. For fevers and field trips. For everything." Claire searched his face looking for doubt. But there was none. Only sincerity and maybe something more tender buried beneath it. 3 weeks later she called him with news: she'd been shortlisted. The boys were excited about a big city with big buildings and even bigger pizza. Claire, however, was a bundle of nerves. So was Noah, though he didn't show it. He started house hunting near Hyde Park, trying to find a neighborhood with good schools, safe sidewalks, and enough space for 3 wild boys to grow. He found a cozy 2-story house with a backyard and a tree just right for a tire swing. It wasn't sleek or modern like his penthouse, but he could already picture muddy shoes in the hallway, Reed's drawings on the fridge, and Saturday mornings filled with pancake chaos. Claire came to visit the place one weekend, boys in tow. It was early April and the chill still lingered, but the sun was bright. The boys raced through the house like it was an amusement park. "Can we live here, Mom? Please?" Owen begged, sliding across the hardwood floors in socks. Claire looked at Noah, then back at the house. "It has potential," she said softly, but there was warmth in her voice. That night they stayed in a hotel downtown. After the boys passed out from sheer excitement, Claire and Noah stepped out onto the balcony, sharing a blanket and watching the city lights flicker below. "It's scary," she admitted. "Starting over again. With you. With all this." Noah nodded, his arm brushing hers. "I get it. But I think sometimes the scariest leaps lead to the best things. We don't have to rush anything. We just try." Claire turned to him, her eyes soft. "Trying sounds nice." By summer, her position was confirmed. The move was official. Noah helped organize the logistics, booking the movers, registering the boys for school, even assembling IKEA furniture with his sleeves rolled up and a screwdriver between his teeth. Claire started to rely on him, not out of desperation, but because she finally trusted him to follow through. Their relationship hadn't resumed where it left off. It was something new, cautious but genuine. They went on walks, shared dinners, sometimes even talked late into the night while the boys slept upstairs. One evening, Liam woke from a nightmare and padded down to the kitchen, where Noah and Claire were laughing over a burnt batch of cookies. "Daddy," Liam mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Can I sleep in your bed tonight?" It was the first time he'd called him that. Noah froze, then looked at Claire, who only smiled. "Of course, buddy," he said, lifting the boy in his arms. That night, as Liam snuggled into his side and whispered something about spaceships, Noah realized he wasn't just visiting anymore. He was home. And for the first time in years, everything felt exactly where it should be. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The house on South Kenwood Avenue had slowly transformed from a shell of walls and empty rooms into a living, breathing home. Summer in Chicago came with its own rhythm: street fairs, lakefront joggers, late sunsets, and the smell of grilled food in every backyard. The boys had adapted quicker than Claire anticipated. Reed had joined a local kids' art program in Hyde Park and already brought home a messy clay dinosaur, proud of every dent and uneven edge. Owen became obsessed with a science club at the museum, and Liam, quiet, thoughtful Liam, had discovered the small library on 55th Street and insisted on going there every Saturday with his reading buddy, who, to no one's surprise, was Noah. Despite all the excitement, Claire still found herself holding her breath, waiting for the bubble to burst. But it never did. Noah showed up. Again and again. Whether it was for the dentist appointments, parent-teacher meetings, or just pizza on Friday nights, he was there. One particularly warm Friday, Claire sat on the porch watching the boys attempt to sell lukewarm lemonade to uninterested passers-by. Noah joined her with 2 iced coffees, handing her one without a word. They sipped in silence, watching Liam try to charm a woman with a stroller while Reed waved a handmade sign above his head like a protester. "They're terrible salesmen," Claire said with a grin. "Yeah, but at least they're enthusiastic about it," Noah replied, nudging her shoulder gently. It was a small moment, but it was filled with something Claire had been missing for years: peace. That weekend, Noah suggested a trip to Navy Pier. It was the first time they were doing something outside the neighborhood together, just the 5 of them. Claire hesitated, but the boys' excitement was impossible to ignore. So she packed snacks, sunscreen, and a change of clothes just in case, and they drove out as a messy, noisy family. The city skyline shimmered across Lake Michigan, and the Ferris wheel loomed high above the crowds. Reed and Owen pulled Noah toward the games while Liam held Claire's hand, his gaze wide and awed. They spent hours hopping between rides and food stalls. Noah tried to win an oversized bear but ended up with a neon frog no one wanted, which Liam adopted anyway. Claire bought funnel cakes and got powdered sugar all over her jeans. Reed talked his way onto a ride he was slightly too short for, and Noah rode with him, knuckles white the whole time. By evening, they sat on a bench facing the water, the boys passed out from sugar and sun, and the city buzzing behind them. "Today felt normal," Claire whispered. "It was more than normal," Noah said. "It felt real." A few days later, Claire's sister Beth flew in from Oregon. She hadn't seen Noah since the divorce and had never hidden her anger over how things had fallen apart. Claire warned her before dinner that things were different now. "We're not together," Claire clarified, "but we're trying to co-parent better." "He's showing up." Beth arched an eyebrow. "Showing up is the bare minimum, Claire." That night, they all sat around the dining table, Noah trying to help Owen with a puzzle while Beth observed like a silent judge. Claire held her breath more than once, waiting for a comment, a snide remark, anything. But by dessert, Beth had softened. She even asked Noah a question about his company, and he answered without the usual guarded tone. After the boys went to bed, Beth and Claire sat on the back porch. "He's different," Beth finally said. "Still the same face but not the same guy who walked away from you 3 years ago." Claire nodded. "I know." As fall crept in, so did routine. School drop-offs, lunchboxes, playground politics. And while the days were full, it was the nights that often carried weight. One night, after tucking in the boys, Noah lingered in the kitchen helping Claire with dishes. There was something in the way he stood, familiar, at ease. Claire glanced at him, soap bubbles on her fingers, and said quietly, "Do you ever regret it?" He didn't pretend not to understand. "Every day," he said. "Not just leaving, but not fighting harder. Not recognizing what I had before it was gone." She nodded, not ready to say she felt the same but not denying it either. In October, Reed's school announced a father-child camping trip. The boys were ecstatic, jumping around the living room chanting, "Dad, Dad, Dad," until Noah had no choice but to sign up. Claire helped pack their gear, slipping extra socks and insect repellent into their bags. "Don't let them eat too many marshmallows," she joked as they loaded the car. "No promises," Noah smiled. When they returned a day later, covered in dirt and stories, Noah handed Claire a folded note Reed had written at the campsite. It read, "I have the best dad. He makes me feel safe." Claire held it for a long time, her throat tight with something she couldn't name. By November, Noah was spending more nights at the house, sometimes on the couch, other times in the guest room when the boys insisted. They had dinner routines, inside jokes, shared laundry days. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it was steady, honest, and full of something they had lost and maybe, just maybe, were finding again. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Claire found herself staring out the kitchen window, the Chicago skyline twinkling in the distance. Noah joined her, silent at first. Then he said, "If I asked to stay, really stay, would you want that?" She didn't turn right away. The question sat in the air between them, thick with years and hurt and hope. When she finally looked at him, her eyes weren't full of uncertainty anymore. "I don't want promises," she said. "I want proof." He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Thanksgiving came with its usual whirlwind of chaos. The house smelled of roasted turkey, sweet potatoes, and something slightly burnt that no one wanted to acknowledge. Claire stood in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, trying to time the mashed potatoes just right while Owen ran around pretending the broom was a sword and Liam quizzed Beth on what she was most thankful for this year. Reed sat quietly at the dining table, helping Noah fold napkins into awkward shapes that were supposed to look like turkeys. The scene would have looked perfect in any holiday magazine. Warm lighting, noisy kids, laughter spilling from every corner. But what made it truly special was the undercurrent of change. It had been months since that winter party where Claire and Noah's paths crossed again, months of cautious rebuilding, baby steps, awkward moments, and silent nights that spoke louder than words. And now, with family around and the boys thriving, Claire realized that something had shifted. They weren't pretending anymore. Beth had invited a couple of her old college friends who now lived in Lincoln Park, and they brought along their dog, a poodle mix named Baxter, who quickly became the center of attention for the triplets. Claire kept glancing at Noah, who seemed completely at home in the midst of it all. He wore an apron over his jeans, helped Beth's friend fix the wobbly chair, and even took Liam outside to rake leaves just because it looked fun. Watching him, Claire felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the oven heat. This was the version of Noah she had loved once, the version she thought had disappeared forever. And now, piece by piece, he was re-emerging. That evening, after everyone left and the boys were tucked in bed, Claire stood by the kitchen island, sipping leftover cider. The silence was comforting. Noah joined her, wiping his hands on a dish towel, and said, "Today was a lot." She smiled. "Yeah, but good." He nodded, then leaned in slightly. "You know, Reed told me he wants to start a new tradition. He wants the 5 of us to cook Thanksgiving dinner every year, no matter where we are." Claire laughed, imagining the chaos. That sounds exactly like something he'd come up with. "He called us Team Mom and Dad." Noah's voice was soft now. And he said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Claire looked away for a second, emotions tugging at her chest. "They're starting to believe we're back. Even if we haven't said it." Noah didn't rush to respond. He waited, choosing his words carefully. "I know I broke things, Claire. And I know you have every reason to keep the door shut. But if you're willing, I want to stay. I want this. Not for just a season. For always." Claire exhaled, slow and deliberate. "Then don't just want it. Work for it." "I am," he whispered, and she believed him. In the following weeks, the rhythm of their days continued to stabilize. Noah officially moved into the guest room. Not a dramatic announcement, just a quiet shift. His suits began to hang in the closet. His coffee mug found its permanent spot next to Claire's. The boys didn't question it. They accepted it the way children do when their world begins to feel safe again. But outside the home, questions began to swirl. Friends, colleagues, even teachers at the boys' school started to ask, "Are you two back together?" Claire never had a simple answer. She didn't want to reduce what they were becoming to a label too soon. One crisp Saturday morning, they took the boys ice skating at Millennium Park. Reed fell constantly but laughed every time. Owen clung to the wall like it was a lifeline, while Liam skated like he was born to do it. Claire found herself holding Noah's hand more than once, not for romance but for balance. Still, it felt right. They shared hot chocolate after, huddled together in puffy jackets, cheeks red from the wind. Claire caught Noah watching her as she helped Liam with his scarf. He wasn't smiling, not exactly. It was something deeper, an ache maybe mixed with awe. December brought snow and school plays and Christmas lists that were way too ambitious. The boys wanted everything from a robot dog to a trip to Florida. Claire rolled her eyes at the list but smiled too. They were dreamers, all 3 of them. And maybe, deep down, so was she. On Christmas Eve, Claire hosted a small dinner. Just close friends and neighbors. Noah helped string up lights outside and even fixed a loose gutter while he was at it. Later, as they played charades and drank eggnog, Beth pulled Claire aside. You do know you've taken him back, right? Claire looked startled. I haven't said anything. You don't have to. It's in your eyes. It's in the way you look at him. And the way he looks at you. Claire didn't deny it. Instead she whispered, I'm scared. Of what? Beth asked. That he'll leave again? Claire shook her head. No. That I'll fall all the way back in. After everyone left, Claire sat on the living room couch, the fire still crackling softly. Noah walked in carrying 2 mugs of peppermint tea. They didn't speak for a while, just listened to the wind outside and the distant honk of a car. Then he said, I've been thinking about proposing again. Not soon. Just someday. I want to do it right this time. Claire didn't flinch. She looked at him, calm and grounded. Then you better make it count. He smiled, not with confidence but with something steadier, hope. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Spring arrived in Chicago with a shy sun and trees that looked like they were finally exhaling. The snow had melted, revealing patches of grass that seemed greener than usual, as if the city itself had been holding its breath. Claire stood at the back porch, watching Owen chase a butterfly across the lawn, his giggles carried by the breeze. Inside, Reed and Liam were trying to convince Noah that their Lego creation was structurally sound enough to probably survive an earthquake. Claire smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full, and that, in itself, felt like a miracle. It had been over a year since that winter party. The world around them had changed and so had they. The old scars hadn't disappeared, but they didn't sting like before. She and Noah had grown into something stronger, not a fresh start, but a continuation with eyes wide open. Noah's company had offered him a major expansion opportunity in Seattle. The old Noah would have taken it without thinking, calculating gain over grounding. But this time he brought the proposal home, printed and annotated, with a conversation instead of a conclusion. If we move, we all move, he had said. And only if you want it. Claire appreciated the respect, the difference. They talked for nights about schools, neighborhoods, how far Seattle was from Beth, how the boys would adjust. And then, unexpectedly, the triplets weighed in. During dinner one night, Liam said, we saw pictures. There are whales in Seattle. Owen added, and rain. You like rain, Mom? Reed nodded solemnly as if he were signing a contract. Let's go be Team Rain. The move happened in June. They settled into a house just outside Bellevue, close enough to the city but quiet enough for kids to be kids. The house had a fireplace, a backyard big enough for a treehouse, and enough rooms for the boys to finally stop sharing. Claire left her old job and started teaching writing workshops part-time, something she had always wanted but never pursued. Noah set up a smaller branch of his firm, choosing a pace that allowed more breakfasts with the boys and fewer midnight emails. It wasn't about slowing down, it was about choosing what mattered. Every room in the new house had windows that opened to green. Claire filled the kitchen with potted herbs. Noah installed shelves for the boys' books and trophies. The family grew into the home like roots finding soil. They explored Pike Place Market, took ferry rides to Bainbridge Island, and spent entire Saturdays at local bookstores. They laughed more, argued less. The air felt different, lighter somehow. One weekend in late August, Claire planned a small gathering. Just neighbors and a few new friends from the boys' school. Noah grilled on the deck, the triplets ran around with sparklers, and the music floated out of an old speaker that crackled slightly but still worked. Claire stood near the garden, sipping lemonade, watching the sun slide below the horizon. A woman named Diane from down the street approached her. So, she asked, how long have you and Noah been married? Claire blinked, caught off guard. Well, technically we're divorced. Diane looked surprised. Oh, I just assumed. You two move like you've been doing life together forever. Claire smiled, her gaze drifting toward Noah, who was trying to light a citronella candle while Owen handed him matches one by one. We've done a lot of living, she said. Just not always in the same direction. Diane nodded, and they stood in silence, watching the family Claire never thought she'd piece back together. Later that night, after everyone left and the boys had collapsed into bed, Noah handed Claire a small envelope. What's this? She asked, half laughing. You already brought me lemonade and cleaned up. He shrugged, unusually quiet. She opened it and pulled out a photograph, an old one. It was from their first winter together in Chicago, almost a decade ago. Snowflakes were caught in her eyelashes. Noah had been looking at her, not the camera, his breath visible in the cold. Tucked behind the photo was a note. It read, I would have chosen you then, I would choose you now, and I'll choose you every day that comes after. Claire looked up, heart thudding. Noah was kneeling, not with a diamond, but with a ring that had once belonged to her grandmother. I know we've already done this once, he said, his voice steady, but this time I want to do it knowing who I am and knowing who you are. I don't want a big ceremony. Just us, maybe a quiet Sunday morning, and 3 loud boys running around in dress shirts they hate. Will you marry me again? Not because we have to, but because we finally know how to. Claire didn't answer right away. She sat beside him, the porch still warm from the day's sun, the stars blinking awake above. You know I'll say yes, she said finally. But you also know you'll have to iron your own shirt. He laughed, pulling her close. They remarried in a small park by Lake Washington. Beth flew in. The triplets wore ties and fidgeted the whole time. Claire wore a simple white dress and sneakers. Noah cried during the vows. The officiant mispronounced Reed's name. It was chaotic, imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. When the ceremony ended, Liam shouted, "Are we still Team Rain?" Claire grinned. "We're Team Us now." The 5 of them walked toward the lake together, skipping stones, the Seattle sky stretching wide above them.